Hello, a wonderful good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're at on the globe. We'll just give a couple more minutes for people to join in and take part so they can all start listening from the very, very beginning. And as I just mentioned, we'll also be recording. So if there's anybody dialing in later or has a friend who would like to know and take part as well but wasn't able to dial in, we'll also upload this recording to YouTube on Monday, I think. So we are able to share that.
Richard, your audio is a little weird.
Okay. I hope I think maybe it's my computer. I'll try to speak up and make it louder and sound better. Let me know if it still continues. Before we dive into this webinar for the Coffee Technicians Guild, I just wanted to briefly mention that if you're interested in anything related to what's going on at the moment, especially to COVID-19, please make sure to check out sca.coffee/COVID-19. There's a lot of resources, a community-driven database that has a lot of resources where we can dive in deeper and you can read up. There's a lot of things you can read, you probably have done. If not, go check it out, please. There's also recordings from other webinars with different topics on the YouTube channel, but also on that page. That's the best starting point. I'm very, very happy for this webinar to take place, and especially that we're going to dive deeper into topics around coffee technicians and Coffee Technicians Guild. And I'm very happy that Hylan, as the chair, is leading this webinar around adapting to our changing business environments with COVID-19. So, Hylan, I'd like to hand over the microphone to you. Oh yeah, before we start, there is also the opportunity for everybody to ask questions via the chat. We will have a question answer in the end, because I do think we'll probably answer a lot of questions throughout the webinar. If there's a couple of questions we don't have or you have, please do put them in the chat, and I'll bring them up on voice in the Q&A at the end of our webinar. So thank you very much for dialing in, and good to have you here. And Hylan, I'm very excited to hand over the virtual microphone to you.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to our webinar, Adapting Our Changing Business Environment with COVID-19. My name is Hylan Joseph. I am the chair of the Coffee Technicians Guild. This webinar comes from an idea I had when this event first started happening a few weeks ago. And what I did over those 4 or 5 weeks that we've been in this is I reached out to every business owner I know and asked them how it was affecting them, what they were doing to alleviate some of the issues, and what they felt the future looked like. And we discussed this with Richard in the group, and we thought that this would be very useful information for the SCA to see and our constituents. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the questions that I asked, and then I'll go through some key points on each questions, and then we're going to interview, we're going to interview 3 people who run different aspects of business. The panel consists of business owners, members of the Coffee Technicians Guild leadership team, and I tried to get a couple of baristas in here, but I could not. But if this panel is for everybody, so anybody that has questions, please feel free and ask. So our panel, and as I say your name, please wave and introduce yourself, is Charlotte Holliday, the owner of Best Beverage in Little Rock, Arkansas. Gene Lemos, owner of Rebel Espresso Parts and Vanelli's Handcrafted Coffee in Rockland, California. And Kurt Benedict, owner of Last Man Coffee in Commerce City, Colorado. They will be our panel. We will be interviewing them after we go through the questions. So our community has seen the scope and the scale of this. Our community has never seen before. And at the end of this, everything is going to change. I wanted to find out how our businesses were dealing with this on a national, a world level, and regional level. So I sent out the 5 questions below. It comes from a dozen questions really pounded down to 5. These are the most important ones. The first one is, have you seen your service or your business calls affected by the pandemic? Second one is, what creative measures are you taking to boost morale? The third is, do you think the current situation will alter our industry? If so, how? The fourth one is, are you utilizing any of the state and federal programs offered? And the fifth one is, are you doing anything to generate sales volume during the pandemic? So I felt that these would be the most easily useful for people that attended. So the first question is, how has your business and service calls been affected by the pandemic? I interviewed about 40 people, and of these 40 people, 65% of the respondents saw their business drop to 30% or less. 20% of the businesses flattened to about 50%, but they're still going strong. 15% of the businesses surveyed chose to close for the duration of the pandemic for cost efficiencies, and then less than 5% just closed due to lack of business. It was interesting to see that we didn't see this drop on large-scale companies as large as I would. I would have expected to see companies with 50 or more employees shut down, and they haven't. What I'm hearing from the service side of it is most service companies are still doing some service. In Santa Cruz, a lot of cafes have just closed and are doing delivery service and are doing online orders. Next question is, what creative measures are you taking to boost morale? We had a lot of really good answers to this one. One of my favorites was everybody discussed about sitting down and having an open and honest conversation with what is happening with their business, how it's going to affect them, and how it's going to affect the staff. There was a lot of discussion of having group meetings about laying people off or furloughing them or doing half pay, and several companies I talked to are continuing to pay staff at half pay rather than laying off or offering loans to get by. One of the things that almost all the companies said was they're keeping the lines of communication open. Service companies are having Zoom or Basecamp meetings to check in with current staff and furloughed staff weekly. I can use myself as a personal example, as none of my techs are working right now. So I'm talking to them on Fridays, making sure they're okay, and the company that I work for is having bi-weekly meetings to give them an update of what's going on with our federal assistance, what's going on with service. So we're letting the staff know what's going on, and that's the key to, I think, making this really work at any level is consistently communicating exactly what's going on, not glossing it over. What do you think the current situation will alter? How do you think the current situation will alter our industry? This was an interesting question because it really gave us a vast swath of answers. A lot of the people said, this is the doom, it's the end of our industry, we're not going to exist anymore. Many felt that this pandemic would change our industry, and I agree. A lot feel that it's going to devastate and diminish the value of specialty coffee experience. They felt there would be a shakeout of cafes, that the higher-end coffee shops would no longer be able to exist, which doesn't make sense because we offer great value to the community. But one of the things that was surprising was even the doomsayers were full of optimism that the industry would spring back in the next 12 to 18 months. And a lot of them are laying out plans for growth. Charlotte, one of our panels, has had some great ideas on how to put companies back online. When I talked to roasters and cafe owners, there was a big drive to grow their business and pivot more towards online ordering and delivery services. All of the roasters I talked to said they were going to start focusing on all of their orders being delivery based and shipping instead of hand delivering. And several of the operations I talked to have seen an interest in office equipment surge, which makes sense because if you think about it, as we start to do the new normal, which is going to be less going out and getting coffee, less socialization, people are going to want to keep their staff inside and serve them their own coffee and save that time and contact. Are you utilizing any of the state and federal programs offered? Obviously, each respondent said they are or they will be utilizing state or federal programs. One of the most common comments I had was the difficulty finding out, going through the maze of what they can use, what they can't use, and the rules. Everyone came back with the same advice: is do your research and ensure that you understand the programs fully before signing up with them. One of the things that I was surprised by, and I've seen on several social media platforms, is robocalls and companies offering services. Not sorry, is people suddenly being your best friend, saying, I'm working with your bank, I can come and help you," and that's make sure that you know who you're talking to and you know the program you're working with. Find a reliable source. Several companies are offering services to their staff and assisting them and accessing state and local benefits. Several companies had seminars and webinars on where to get that. They've advised them what furlough means and what being laid off means. Are you doing anything to generate sales volume during the pandemic? Service companies are offering decommissioning services for stores that are closed, coupled with reopening. Several companies that I've been developing programs for have been developing programs for equipment sterilization services before their stores open. And larger scale companies are actually sending out contract requests to do this for coffee. Roasters and cafes have offered to take the barista and roaster coffee experience online to help their customers. A couple innovative things that I've seen online, and some of the people I talked to, they were now doing online how to make coffee, how to make your latte at home, and doing webinars for customers, and in some cases specifically tailoring the experience to individual customers to help them with their espresso machine and their brewers. Service companies are keeping staff employed by refurbishing equipment and getting it ready for sale. So let's go to the panel. What I'd like to do is we're going to start with Charlotte Holiday, and we're going to go through the same question. So Charlotte, what I'd like you to start with is introduce yourself and discuss your company.
I'm Charlotte Holiday. I'm one of two owners of Best Beverage Equipment, and we started off in remanufacturing, and now we have a service arm to our company as well that we cover a lot of the middle part of the United States. And, you know, as you were talking, Hylan, it sparked up some thoughts on some of what you were saying. Would you like me to talk about some of that?
Yeah, let's go through the questions and then let's speak to the stuff, the additional ideas.
Okay, ask the question.
The first question is, how have your service calls or business been affected by the pandemic?
Okay, so for the first 2 weeks, our numbers were down about 19% on the revenue side, and the second 2 weeks we saw a little bit drop more than that, so we ended that at a little over 29%.
So what creative measures have you taken to boost morale? How did it work when you told your staff that? How was the process in closing up shop?
Well, first of all, we did not close up shop. Okay. We are based in Arkansas, and here we have kind of thinned out the office a little bit. We let some people work from home, moved some people around, did some things that needed to be done so that people could continue to do their job in the office. And then out in the field, we took mitigation. Early on, we were talking about that. And, you know, you and I have had a lot of discussions about how this was just kind of part of our culture anyway that we were talking. So it wasn't like all of a sudden I had to get the attention of everyone in the company to try to say something important.
Sorry, I'm getting chatted with. Do you think this current situation will alter our industry? How do you think it will alter our industry, and where do you think we're going to go?
Okay, so this is some of the stuff that was kind of cool while you were talking. I was just thinking, you know, as far as the specialty coffee industry alone, I can speak to that, and then just in general, so because we're a lot more than just specialty coffee, so we do a lot of just commercial beverage equipment, right? So we do, like, we're diversified with like different types of venues as well as different type of equipment. But to talk about the specialty coffee side, you know, I actually think it's kind of exciting for the industry, and I don't think that it's dead. It may be just changed, and I think that this is kind of how it defines leaders and how they pivot. I think there's some new opportunities for specialty coffee. And to speak on your point of changes as far as more remote or more online, maybe. And I mean, obviously that's what everybody's saying, so I'm not going to argue too loud about it, but I think people are starved for human interaction right now. And I think that, I don't know, they may be kind of tired of some of this remote stuff that they had to do for a long time. And you may see a little bit of the opposite. People want to see each other.
I'd agree. Obvious question, you're utilizing state and federal programs. How has that navigating that bureaucracy been?
Well, all I can say is I'm glad we didn't absolutely have to have anything from the government because we haven't exactly gotten it.
So you're finding that it's actually more difficult than the government than we're being told.
Yeah, that's what we're finding.
So I want to go back to question one about your service calls. You guys are a national presence. On a national level, how has it affected you?
Interesting you say that, you know, and I could probably talk for way longer than I have to talk about that right now. What we have done is, you know, because we work with a lot of vendors in some states that we don't have our own technicians. And so I will say that we have tightened up just a little bit. Some of the areas, like on the West Coast specifically, you know, some of our vendors are just simply not answering the phone. So what we did originally to kind of help some of these guys out, we just made sure that we paid everyone we had bills, even if they weren't due yet. We just immediately, when the onset of this came, for some of those small companies that were out there, we went ahead and just gave them any money that was outstanding from us to them, so that hopefully they could, you know, stay in business and not have to worry about one more vendor not paying, because some of the large guys just simply aren't paying. And so we did that, and I mean, we've tightened up some, but you know, it hasn't been real hard to tighten up on those outer areas because business is slow.
Right. Are you guys doing anything creative to generate sales volume during this?
Well, if I told you that, I'd have to kill you. No, I'm just kidding.
That's fair enough.
I mean, sure. I mean, not anything groundbreaking.
No, you don't have to give up your tricks.
No, I mean, we're you know, as far as volume right now, where I'm seeing the biggest dip and probably more of our sales revenue down because of is equipment sales. Even the remanufactured equipment sales have been down, which is surprising, but I guess everybody right now is just a little bit just stunned. So they're not doing a whole lot of anything. So I think that's probably where most of our sales, but you know, as far as on the service side, I mean, we service a lot of convenience stores and healthcare facilities and stuff like that. So while it may be down some, it's not really down significantly because of the diversification of the types of equipment and the types of venues that we service.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to jump over to Gene Lemos, who is also one of the founders of the Guild board, one of the original board members of the Guild. He's owner of Rebel Espresso Parts and Vanelli's Handcrafted Coffee in Rockland, California. I picked Gene because he's dealing with this issue as a parts retailer, and he's also has a roaster, and he's got an interesting perspective from both ends. Gene, would you introduce yourself and speak to your history a little bit? I'd appreciate it.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Gene Lemos. I've been roasting coffee about 1978 and repairing espresso machines by trial and error from 1979 forward. At that time, we were self-taught because we did not have people to teach us. And when the opportunity came up to work with the Guild, we thought it was a fabulous idea. And that's about my history.
Okay. Let me grab these questions here. Hang on. Somehow I managed to misplace them.
How is your business down, Gene?
I know, seriously. Okay,
well,
Gene.
The business is down quite a bit. I mean, we run skeleton. We furloughed almost everybody at the parts business We are open every day. We shortened our hours a bit. We're only open till 3:30 Pacific time. But we still are shipping daily. We have seen an increase in the past week. They almost stopped. They really almost stopped a couple of weeks ago. But I've talked to several of our service suppliers, and they say, I run 5 trucks, and it's the owner usually I'm talking to, and they say I run 5 trucks, and everybody has been furloughed, and so I'm going van to van and cleaning out, so I don't have to spend any money. And so we're a bit concerned because we think that this is going to come back in the next few weeks, that there'll be it'll be very, very busy. It'll go from 0 to 60 in a day or 2 days. So.
Hey, Gene, I have an additional question on the supply chain end. How has this affected your supply chain for parts and green beans?
Green beans, we stock relatively heavy in-house. We do have contracts, and we, I think it's a phone call away, a day away, really, for us to get additional product. Supply chain from Italy. Most of my vendors, I've had a couple vendors that have closed, and they're holding orders, but they're just outside of Milan, and so they're having challenges. I have other vendors not too far from Milan that are still shipping to me, and so the supply chain has been interrupted because our vendors. Some vendors I just can't get anything out of them. But for the core items, I'm still receiving shipments as I need them. Of course, I don't need as much as I need it, but we usually get about 15 a month or 20. I move internationally. So the ones that were in process have made it, and we are placing new orders now. So when the Italians and the other Europeans that we work with come out of this, hopefully they'll start shipping again.
So when we did the interview, you mentioned I asked you about how the communications went with your cafe businesses, your roasted your cafe business is the pie roasting company. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I believe you told me somebody decided to just close. Was that correct?
Well, and my concern is every day that this goes on, a certain number of people that just cannot recover from it, and I feel that I don't have a hard estimate right now of what business we will forfeit, but we've talked to a couple people that are just closing. Most are doing the best they can to hold on, but in California they've really shut down the restaurant and the cafe business. I mean, almost completely.
Yeah.
We're in an industrial park, and we have a pretty brisk walk-in business anyway of people that have found us to purchase product from home, but that has increased actually, and we ship, and we've offered it. We have well, you'll get to the question later. Go ahead.
Okay. How do you think this current situation is going to alter our industry for the future?
I think it's going to shake out some of the people that are just starting or that just opened and were hoping, to make a life of this. And I hope that those people are not discouraged and they come back and give it a shot again. I think overall, specialty coffee, people are not giving up coffee, and the cafes and the people that have seen additional equipment in the office space that you mentioned earlier, I think that's good, but people are starved, and I agree with Charlotte. They are starved for human interaction, and the cafe setting is one, and in the beginning it could be a little bit, I'm going to call it weird for lack of a better term, because you go into a cafe, you a lot of times probably brush up against somebody. I mean, they're tight, they're busy. We'll see less of that, but I think in the next few months that will come back because that's what we're accustomed to, and I don't think we're going to give that up.
Thank you. How is it going with you and the bureaucracy of the state and federal programs?
Well, for us, I got a phone call from, I have to do this twice because the companies are separate. The only thing in common is that I own them both. But my bankers called me 2 days ago and actually gave me a code to do the DocuSign thing, but I have not seen the paperwork yet, but they've told me that it's coming. It's that far along that it is coming.
Okay.
I work with a community bank, and I think they've been helpful. I have friends that work with larger banks, and they're having trouble. I'm not picking on larger banks, just so that we're clear, but they're having greater difficulty in securing and filling out the paperwork.
No, I've actually heard that from several of the interviewees, that the smaller banks and the credit unions have been a lot easier to work for. It's been kind of a common thread in the interviews. Are you doing anything to generate additional sales volumes that you can't threaten my life with?
Probably. No, for the roasting company, we're sending out kind of how-to emails, just educational, because a lot of people, we also sell home espresso machines and that kind of thing at that business, and we're sending out educational emails on steaming milk, on pulling a good shot, grinding adjusting burrs. We also with this are covering the freight. Coffee, they buy, I think, 3 bags of coffee, and we pay the freight and ship it to them 2 days. So that some of the people can still have coffee at home. Because I think it's one of those things, you can drink coffee all day, but if you start with a bottle of bourbon and you try that all day, usually, at least for me, by noon, 1 o'clock, I'm for a nap. So.
Thank you. Before we move on to Kurt, I've had a question asked. Who did I interview, and how did I do it? I interviewed about 70 people altogether. A lot of it was casual conversations. I specifically interviewed Kurt Benedict, Gene Lemos, and Charla as part of an interview process and a program that we're doing on the Guild website that gives clear details of what they're doing. I'm a former barista, so I'm really well connected to the coffee network. So I reached out to a lot of the cafes that I worked with that are going through this, and friends that I know that own cafes, to see what they're doing. So it's not, my data is written down, it's on a spreadsheet, and I did a lot of European data, but like Italy, they're locked down. They're all closed. There's not much that we can take from it. Australia's headed towards lockdown. England is locked down. So the lessons learned from that, everybody on the European end just basically said we should have acted faster, and they don't know what it's going to happen. So if you have any specific questions speaking to that, feel free and go through the chat, and I'm happy to answer. The next person, hold on. Now I'd like to introduce Kurt Benedict. Kurt sits on our content group with the Guild and does a lot of work with the Coffee Technicians Guild otherwise. Kurt, if you could speak to who you are, where you're from, and what your history is, I would appreciate it.
All right. Well, as Hylan said, my name is Kurt Benedict. I'm actually out in Commerce City, Colorado. I own Last Man. We focus mainly on espresso machines and coffee brewers, but have been known to take a little side work and extra beverage solutions, whether it be kegs or ice machines or something. I actually have quite a vast background in service, so I can fix just about anything, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because I get asked all the time to fix stuff I don't want to. But it's been real fun. Knowing all of this was very easy for me to, working on cars, working on home appliances, made it very easy for me to transfer into the coffee industry and start working on the machines. And I've just found a passion for it that I can't describe in words really, because I like building custom machines for some of my customers. And doing anything I can for my customers to help them out. Basically, that's kind of who I am. Going for it.
So how many? You're three techs, right?
Yes, we're 3 techs and an office manager, so we're a fairly small group right now.
Okay. So how has it affected your business? How has it affected your service calls?
So the first, let's say, 2 weeks of the lockdown, it affected me tremendously. I mean, I run for larger corporations and for local customers, and so I lost a lot of my preventative maintenance work that I was doing for the corporate guys, and then a lot of the local customers were just locking cash down. They weren't ready to put any money out to do anything. They wanted to see what was happening first. So, I mean, I bet I saw almost an 80% drop in business in that first 2 weeks. But I'm actually starting to see business come back with the customers that kind of adapted to the situation, whether it's doing drive-through only, curbside pickup, or the walk-in customers. I've actually seen quite a few of the local cafes and shops start doing really well again. And actually, a couple of them have told me they're doing even better than they were before. So it's kind of interesting to see the fluctuation I've seen already with the service calls. So it started out bad, and I'm starting to pick up again. But it's actually my local cafes that I'm getting more calls from right now than it is the corporate ones.
So to speak to your comment about local cafes, what are you seeing them doing that's driving this sales growth and this momentum?
One is just being open. There are quite a few that have shut their doors and they're not willing to try. And you have all these people that are furloughed, they're on quarantine, they're on lockdown at home, and they want to be able to get out. So what's the easiest thing for them to do? Walk a block away to their local cafe and get a quick cup of coffee. And to do that, I've seen anything from basically roll-up counters to the front door with plexiglass where they have a 10-inch gap so they can just pay and hand off coffee to their customers, to only allowing one person or 2 people in the cafe at a time, just enough room to keep it going, and then just having a line outside the door. So that was local pickup or local cafes. The drive-through cafes that I work with are doing great. They're actually, some of them are reporting more business than they've ever had, just because now, once again, people are trying to get out of their house. They want that the feeling of being around someone. So even just getting out of the house and driving to that cafe, people are doing that right now. So like I said, it's the walk-up cafes and the drive-throughs that I've seen a lot of business going for them right now. But the walk-up cafe, the key is it's got to be in residential areas. If it's all the ones in downtown Denver right now, they're closed. I don't know if any of them are open. Most of them are, like I said, in the actual residential areas.
When you first started out and you saw your drop, how did you handle the staff morale, and how did you handle communicating with the team?
So normally I'm in the field with my technicians, and I actually backed off the field work for those 2 weeks and just let my 2 other guys just run as much as they could. And I just kind of kept myself busy with paperwork, because I'm sure the rest of the panel know, as a business owner or manager, there's tons of paperwork. There's always paperwork for us to be doing. But I've always had a very open source of communication. I love talking to my guys. I call them all throughout the day and just say, hey, what's going on? You need help? Oh, okay. Or they know they can call me any time of the day with anything business related. So it's just been very easy to talk to them and say, hey, this is what's going on. We need to get out, and if you see something, just mention it. Just talk to the customers, because one, that does help us get money in just talking to them, and that's helped us. Sorry, I'm stepping ahead until your next question.
No, let's go to the next question. The current situation, everybody feel like this is going to really alter our industry. And you are, as a smaller business, you seem directly connected to your cafes. Can you speak to how you feel it's going to alter our business, the service business, and what kind of changes you might see at the local cafe level?
See, I'm torn, to be very honest, because I see a lot of the corporate customers now that are going to their local cafes that are open and going, oh, wow, here's this major difference. Or they're ordering the coffee from their local cafes, getting, the drive or whatever, the Grubhub or whatever it's called, and getting the drinks delivered to them. And I think it's helping those businesses, which are helping me. And so I think I may see a swing from more of the larger corporations to a little bit more of the local cafes, is what part of me wants to believe. But then the other part of me goes, well, as soon as we're released from the lockdowns, does that just mean everyone's just going to go back to normal? So I'm really torn and curious at the same time. Is it going to be the local cafes that hurt, or are they going to end up thriving because people get to get out there and they get to taste the drinks that local cafes can provide versus the same thing thrown out windows from every other big chain retailer? So I'm not sure, to be honest. It's going to be a real interesting scenario, and I think it's going to vary from region to region. I honestly think parts of Colorado and the Denver metro area, we're going to see a huge drive to get towards the local cafes. I don't necessarily think it's going to stay more on the corporate side. And I think that would be good. Once again, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Have you waded into the bureaucracy of the federal programs? How's that experience been for you?
Miserable.
Okay.
I originally started out just trying to do what the SBA said. And yeah, it's just, that was a nightmare on its own because, they put out an application and they said, okay, fill out your application. But then it was, oh, by the way, you have to find a bank that will actually accept your application. And I'm going, what in the world? And being a smaller guy, I'm only tied in with, I try to keep my money with credit unions, trying to help out my community. And the credit unions were going, we're not doing this yet. We don't even know how to deal with it yet. So I actually then went back to my payroll company and asked them, and they said, well, we can put you with a company and we can hand you all the documents you need. So it was actually a payroll company that helped my payroll company that allowed me to find the correct way to go through and get approval. So I've gotten I've gotten my numbers that say I'm approved. I'm just waiting on my actual loan to be put through. And I mean, it's just going to be used to basically keep my guys here if anything else goes downhill.
Are you doing anything to generate additional sales or grow your volume?
Definitely. Just to start, I mean, I've been working with my guys on just a simple upsell. Whether it be when you're in the cafe, mention something. Hey, when's the last time have you had a PM? When's the last time your birds were done? Do you want me to calibrate anything? I mean, it's one of those good signs that, one, you're taking care of your customer. They feel that you're taking care of them more, but it does generate a little bit of extra revenue. I've actually been going to some of my customers that have been going, we want that machine rebuilt, we want that machine rebuilt, or we want this modification put on the machine. And I've gone, hey, what do you think? Do you want to try and do it right now? And I've had quite a few jump on board and say, yeah, let's get that machine in here or into you and get the steam valves modified, get it powder coated, get a PM done, get the descaling done. So I guess the biggest thing is just me opening my mouth, just talking to my customers and being there for them and being open has actually generated quite a bit of revenue for me in the last few weeks.
Okay. I'm going to round robin here. Has anybody actually received any federal funding? Gene, have you got anything yet?
No, I haven't. I have
Charla?
not.
Okay, and Kurt, you're still working on it. Do either of you have any questions before we open up the floor for questions? I have a couple more questions, but either of you have anything you want to finish with before we open up for questions?
I'd like to comment for the service people that are listening. I got a call yesterday from one of our filtration companies, and they told us that if the filters sit for a long period of time, a month, they start to develop bacteria, and telling us that we should be aware of that. We will be putting out an email with the facts of that in the near future, but that's another avenue for the service people. When things open up, they should be prepared for that, because it would be horrible to come out of this virus situation into some kind of another situation that we're making people sick. So I just wanted to comment on that. I heard that directly from one of the major filter companies.
Yeah, we've seen for some of our large customers, everybody was incredibly careful about decommissioning their espresso equipment and their brewer equipment. No one actually turned off their water systems or removed the filters or unplugged them. So I'm expecting for anybody that deals with water systems to see a big explosion of water work coming down the line. Apparently there's some good questions on the floor, so I'm going to hand the mic back to Richard, and we'll do the best we can answer.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for sharing. And I think just from the questions I've received, the audience as well is very appreciative of your thoughts and takes, and also the actions you're doing. One of the questions, which I think was really nice, was, do you think that this will be an opportunity to increase the awareness of taking better care and cleaning of coffee equipment? So this actually as a hold, right, to make people more aware of like what equipment does in your coffee shop and how essential it is. Do you think this is something you've seen, or maybe do you think this is something that's happening at the moment?
Charla, you want to speak to that one? And then Kurt? I'd like to hear from all of you. So let's start with Charla, then we'll go to Kurt and Gene.
I'm sorry, Richard. I was having a very difficult time hearing you, Richard. Can you recap it very succinctly again?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're breaking out like every other word.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe that's my internet connection. I hope, because all the people are watching Netflix at the moment in Germany here. The question was, do you think that this will be an opportunity to increase the awareness of taking better care and cleaning of the coffee equipment?
Right. Okay. No, I think people are just going to do what they always do. I mean, if you want me to be blunt, I don't. If there may be a certain amount, of a push for it, I think that people are going to slide back into old habits and patterns as soon as it becomes comfortable.
Kurt?
I actually have been able to speak with more of my local cafes once again and spend the time to teach them, and they're lapping it up. They're going, hey, we actually have time to listen to you. Let me listen to you. Now, like Charlotte said, I don't think any of the bigger chains, gas stations, and all that are going to really care. It's just going to be another person comes in and has to deal with that equipment, and that's it. But I think the local guys that maybe always wanted to learn a little more are taking that time to learn right now. But that's just my 2 cents on that.
Gene?
We try to teach people when we put in espresso equipment at the roasting plant. We do a complete training for cleaning, because it is critical for a good cup of coffee. And when we visit and the salespeople visit, we pay attention to that. And if they're not doing a good job, then we actually visit with the owner or management again. So I don't know the people that, and I agree with Charlotte. The people that are not cleaning are not cleaning. It's not going to do it. They're going to call us to fix it when it's so gummed up and the solenoid valves are plugged or whatever else. They're going to call us for the service call, and then they're going to complain for the cost of the service call. But that's common, and we expect that. One thing that was brought up, Don Berquist is an icon in the industry, and he brought this up. And if you people, he works for Ranchilio, so you can find him that way. But he brought up that these larger companies, the international and national companies, may be looking for sanitation before they open, and that's another opportunity for service people. So Don had a pretty good. He walked me through it, but if anybody wants to talk to him, look him up on the Ranchilio site. He's a great guy, lots of information. But he brought that up as well, to sanitize the equipment. He doesn't think the mom and pops are going to do it, but he thinks the national chains will want to do
I can actually speak on that. Some of the national chains have already started putting that in place. So
Okay.
it's something that was rolled out actually 2 to 3 weeks ago, and they're sending equipment to their vendors already to deal with that. So it's more to look, if you're thinking about that as a service provider, look to your local cafes to be providing that for them. And even if they're open, some of them are wanting that right now. And that is a big question I do get is what chemicals to use, and I just tell them to look on the CDC. But it's a great opportunity, and you're exactly right on that, Gene.
Thanks, you guys. I actually agree with all of you. I tend to lean towards Charla, but I was a cafe manager for a big part of my career, and what I see this is it's also a big, massive reboot for a lot of these businesses. And with reboot, you really, I encourage a lot of my customers, I actually even to my kids, a lot of the stuff is this is a time to change your bad habits because your bad habits aren't habits right now. They've been put off to the side. And I think a lot of cafes can go and teach them the right habits. I have high hopes. I'm an optimist. So I think that there is a lot of potential to actually make it work, and there's a commitment to it. Richard,
It's an
next question.
exciting time.
It is. It is. I mean, I hate to say it, but Charlotte is like the perennial optimist, and I watch this closely. But this is a very exciting time for our industry because there's going to be a shakeout, and it's not going to end as well as we like. But there's so much positive coming out of this that I think a lot of people need to step back and see that ahead of what's going on. Richard, next question, please.
Yeah, exactly. I think this fits really well with the next question somebody posted. Thanks for posting this question. Is do you think that the coffee culture, and I think Kurt already talked a little bit about this, do you think that the coffee culture and specialty coffee will find more room to increase share in some markets?
Let's start with Gene on that one.
I'm going to agree with Kurt. I think that a lot of these people have been going to company, I don't know, I'm not company A and having coffee for a long time because that's where they think they need to go for coffee, and they've gone into a local cafe and they're going, wow, this tastes different, and I'm going to leave it at different. And they may like it better. And I think that we're going to see a trend towards I think we're going to see it's going to be an opportunity for the specialty coffee people. I think the smaller companies to expand or pick up more business.
Darla?
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
And this is like what I was saying earlier. I just think that it's the way that you just have to step back and you look at, all right, when all the chips are like, or when all the, I don't know, when all the spaghetti's against the wall, I mean, I don't, whatever term you want to use, when it's a reset like this, you just have to like kind of take all the pieces and figure out how to do something creative and interesting that might be the new best thing, coming out of this. I really don't know. I think that, specialty coffee is not like, I don't sell coffee. So for me, I can't really speak to, how specialty coffee people will be able to think creatively and get ahead of this, but I think there's tons of opportunity.
Thank you. Kurt?
Kind of as I said before, it's really dependent. I do think if the cafe will push for it. So the cafes have to be open right now for that opportunity to happen. If the cafe is closed and the people don't get to go to that local cafe right now, I don't think it will help, or I think it will hurt, and it won't allow specialty coffee to grow. So the biggest thing I think right now is as long as those cafes are open, where people can just come walk up, grab a cup, and walk out, I think that will help grow the specialty coffee because, like all of you have said, it will allow people to go, hey, that's a better cup of coffee, or that's a different, sorry, I'll use that Gene's term, that's a different cup of coffee. So it's the biggest thing. They just have to be open right now.
I think back to the recession in 2006 to 2008 to 2009. It was also the same time that third wave really gained its footing. So while we saw a lot of our business decline, a lot of the third wave groups, Intelligentsia, Verve, Stumptown, they kept continuing to grow. And I think it speaks back to Kurt's comment about whenever there's a situation like this situation is different than anything we've ever seen. But I was amazed by how all of my third wave roasters and all of my third wave coffee shops were showing double-digit growth when everybody else was in a decline. And I think this is going to be a real same situation. It actually may be extended because speaking to what Kurt says is Starbucks in my town is closed up, but all the local cafes are still serving coffee at their window, at their doors. So they're going to completely pull all of those sales from Starbucks. Thank you. Richard, next question.
Yes, absolutely. The next one is, I think, kind of, because this is almost like a positive outlook, what we just did, right? This question, I think, is also really relevant, is from a person, I guess, who's still servicing and says that it would be really interesting to know or hear from other technicians how they feel about doing services at the moment. As for that person asking the question, it's very scary at this time, right? I think we can relate of like going outside, going to customers. And I think it's how, do you have like similar situations, or is there some measurements you take to make that less of a scary time, I guess?
Kurt, why don't you start?
For my guys and for me, the biggest thing I did was I actually got information for my team, and we reviewed, all the proper cleaning procedures, and I talked to them basically, like, I grew up with nurses for parents, and I remember that they would tell me stories about, like, the gloves only work if you're not touching your face, and if you touch like a dirty surface, you gotta change gloves. So I made sure my guys knew how important it was that hand washing is a must. If you touch anything besides that machine that we're working on, wash your hands. We show up in the store, we wash our hands. Some stores require gloves. Some actually prefer us not to have gloves. But they want us washing our hands all the time. So, I mean, like right now, all my vehicles are stocked with multiple boxes of nitrile gloves. I've been trying to find masks anywhere I can for my guys. I've been going to local coffee shops that are sewing them, and I've been buying multiple masks so the guys can just switch out masks as they go, because that's another part of it, is I make sure my guys understand the fact that once you touch that mask, it's now dirty. You've got to change your mask again. And I just make sure they understand all of the hygiene when it comes to this, because as long as you understand the hygiene, I don't think it is that scary. But the scary part is there's a lot of people out there that don't understand the hygiene aspect of this. So they're out there, they're getting right up in your personal space. They're like normal, right in your face, and like nothing ever happened or nothing's going on. And it's like, you're like trying to step back and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I think the biggest fear for us is more the other people, just them not practicing safe hygiene during this.
Charla?
Hey,
So actually,
so
Charlie, can I add to the question a little bit? You're national. So how did you handle it on a national level too?
okay, so sometimes being a little extra prepared might make people raise their eyebrows at you at the beginning, like, oh, it's not really going to be that bad. But well, what if it is, right? So we had actually ordered masks when we kind of started hearing about all of this. And so we were when Amazon started putting, masks on, I don't know, you're going to get them maybe sometime end of April, right? We had just gotten in another supply. And that was, I don't know, early mid-March, something like that. But those types of things, they're expendable, they don't last forever. So what we did was we brought it to the people that work here, and we made it a social thing. And you'd be surprised how many people know how to run a sewing machine. And we bought rolls of some filter material to go inside of the cloth masks. We had kind of, I wouldn't say competitions, but we made it kind of a cultural pop within the company. We use a social interaction tool to kind of keep everybody together from different places that don't see each other all the time. And on there, I posted and said, hey, I'm going to put pictures online of y'all, using your mitigation tactics that we've discussed. And so shoot a picture, so I had so many pictures submitted of people in creative masks and wearing gloves. And what that did was it sparked, and I put it into like a little collage and put it on LinkedIn, so that people knew that, hey, you're getting out there showing that you have best beverage pride here. And so what that did was within our organization, it sparked a lot of conversation. And it's funny because I've sat there and said about how to wear gloves appropriately and all this other stuff multiple times, but once they started seeing people, and one of the pictures was a couple of guys that had their gloves on in their truck, and so another technician was like, hey y'all, let's talk about how to wear gloves. And it was interesting because everybody just kind of like popped into the conversation, and it made it much more dynamic than anything I could have done. And I'll say two other things. One of our technicians in Texas, his wife said, I want to make everyone in the company a reusable mask. And as we've been sitting here talking, I saw pop up a picture. The guy in our parts department said, hey, I have an entire box of masks here. What do you want me to do with them? And so, we're going to be able to have those as and like say, we had bought some of the rolls of the filter material to cut to put inside the little pockets that she made. And so these are things that we're going to be able to supply for the employees. But I also wanted to say, Kurt, as far as purchasing these types of things, Etsy is a good place. People are making masks and they're selling them.
Well, real quick,
Thank you, Charlie.
I just like supporting local. That's why I've been trying to find the coffee shops that are doing them.
And I get that, and that's great. I'm just saying, if you can't find them, people are making them in their homes, sending them out. So
I had an incredibly interesting incident with a tech that doesn't work for me, where I had to explain to him that wearing gloves doesn't mean you can wipe your face. Gene, your turn.
We've still been going out on service calls, and we practice social distancing. He has gloves, guy has a mask. He doesn't very often. We have asked people, and if you guys are servicing, that when you're working on something, you can feel them breathing on the back of your neck because they're watching. And we've asked them not to do that because, we just don't need them that. We actually tell them we charge more now if you want to get that close and watch. So,
that's funny. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Stick to the social distancing charge.
Yeah. So, but we're still going out. But washing the hands is critical, and not touching your face, and that's where we're practicing that. But when Kurt mentioned all that, I don't know if I've seen that on the SCA website, but maybe the proper protocol um, would be helpful, step by step, numbered, whatever needs to happen. But it might be, maybe some people don't actually know that, and it would be a benefit. Even though it's been pounded recently, it still maybe would be nice to have some type of protocol that's printed out.
Thank you. We went to gloves and masks pretty quick because, as you know, Gene, California hit that panic button fast. So
Mm-hmm.
we've had a lot of service incidents with the techs, with proximity, and we had a lot of trouble getting getting masks, and some stores wouldn't let us in. So we went to bandanas, and that actually they were happy with that. But we went on early, and I'm actually going to continue to use the gloves, require neoprene gloves after the event.
We're
Richard,
hoping you
we have.
continue. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
No, I was saying we're hoping that you continue to use the mask.
Thanks, buddy. That's nice of you. Richard, we are at 9. I'm happy to continue going if you'd like to ask some more questions. Is everybody good going? Continuing? Charla? Richard, you
Yep.
okay? We go a little further, a little longer?
Yes,
Sure.
I think we can do one final question, just to
Okay.
be also time aware for all the people that have joined. So I think the last one, I think, kind of goes to Gene, what you said, like the question about a protocol, like when reopening, is there a sort of protocol of the best practice of sanitizing? I don't know if this is something you could talk about, or the best protocols of how to, if your coffee shop has been closed for some time, the best protocols of like how to fire up your machines again. I'm trying to combine a couple of questions. Like one was also that there is, like with changing temperature and with the scale inside, right? In machines, what are best practices to basically firing up your equipment again?
Let's start with Gene on that one.
I didn't fully understand. You're talking about just like restarting an espresso machine after being closed for a period of time?
That's how I understood the question exactly. Like one is the equipment, and the other one is also like, is there best practices of sanitizing your equipment?
Okay. Well, the most machines run at a pretty high temperature, but when you turn off an espresso machine for any period of time, a lot of these 220 machines are turned on and left on until they're removed or replaced because they're worn out or they need to be serviced. We believe, and with past experience, when they get turned on, if they've been turned off for a month or month and a half, we think pumps, pressure stats, gaskets, we think the machine's going to leak from many places and have other issues. And so hopefully the people, if they think they're going to open in a week, they may want to get their service guy out early so that he can make sure he or she has what they need to the machine so it's operational. And then after it's operational, there are a lot of companies that make great sanitizers. And I've talked to friends of mine in the chemical business, and some actually have the COVID-19 mark on the side. So, and it actually says that, but it kills pretty much everything, staph and everything else. But they may want to wipe down counters on a daily basis. Most of these products, you buy a gallon of it and you make 128 gallons with it. So, and you put it in a spray bottle and you wipe things down, and it's pretty sanitary. Espresso machines themselves, the inside, the brewing-ish part is coming out hot enough, nothing lives on that. The outside is probably the concern. If people touching it, sneezing, etc., coughing. But I think that you should give your service guy a little heads up before you open, because it's gonna, I think there'll be many challenges as people reboot espresso machines.
Let's do Charla next. Charla, I think you're on. Charla, you're still on mute. Charla, you're on mute still.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so I can send you an attachment that a friend of mine sent me a couple weeks ago about water treatment startup guidance after an extended shutdown that came from Pentair. I don't know if that's interesting to anyone or not, but I can send this to you and you can put it up.
We can post it on Facebook.
Yeah, and it just talks about how to work with the filtration systems, the RO systems, and things like that. But to echo what Gene said, I think that people really need to be looking ahead and saying, first of all, let's stay in contact with listening to what our governors are saying, because that seems to be right now, as of current, the way things are as of yesterday afternoon, that's where the decisions are going to be made. So once we, kind of have an understanding of 14 days or 7 days or whatever it's going to be before we start to open up again, maybe start calling some of your customers, and if you're a service company, and say, hey, it's looking like maybe kind of sort of we might be back up and running in 14 days. Would you like to go ahead and start getting ahead of this?
Yeah, we've told all of our customers, don't turn on the machine the day you're opening. And apparently that was a plan for some customers. Like, no, don't do that. Kurt, can we hear from you?
Biggest one I actually like to point out to people is on the startups, flushing. If your filter's been sitting there for a month, flush the filters, and make sure once you flush the filters for a while, when you turn that machine on, flush it. So that's just the first thing I'm going to do before I'm even going to worry about sanitizing, just in case I make a mess doing that. You never know what sediment has settled in those pipes, in those filters, after a month and a half. So there could be quite a bit of just gunk in there. So I'd say flush it. And then, as Gene was saying, the machines are hot enough internally that nothing's going to live on it. So I'm not too worried about that side of it. It's just the wipe down. Biggest thing is I make sure, tell all my customers, get those cups off the top and run them through the cleaner or through their sanitizers. They go, oh, well, the cups are warm. Well, that's only, maybe 130 degrees, somewhere in there. Those cups that's still not warm enough. We need to be hitting that 170, 180 mark. So get the cups off there, wash them, sanitize the outside of the machine. Those are the biggest things I've been telling customers on the restarts. Just make sure filters are clean, or all the water's been flushed, and get the cups off, wash them, and sanitize the outside of the machine is what I've been telling everyone.
Thanks, Kurt. I have one last question before I turn the mic back over to Richard. And I want to start with Gene. What are your key takeaways from this? What are you going to walk away with after this is done and go, this is the lesson that I learned?
What lesson have I learned? Boy, the economy can go from a robust, rocking economy to pretty much in the toilet in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I tell you, I would not have expected that. And I'm not sure that you can prepare for something like this. I mean, we heard about it, but we didn't hear about it on our soil, and we hear about things around the world. And I'm not sure how much we could have, at least my companies, how much better we could have prepared with this. I think that when something happens like this, the takeaway is to figure out how to adapt, and maybe, and if you don't use it, come up with a plan before, sooner than later, so that you can implement something relatively quickly. I mean, we were probably, I would say we're probably a week in denial. I hate to say it that way, but probably we said, okay, this isn't really going to really carry through, and this isn't going to happen. And all of a sudden we were kind of caught that way. But I think that I guess my takeaway would be, if once it starts, to kind of come up with the plan B and have it ready in case we need to implement it.
Okay. Kurt, how about you, my man?
Lesson I've learned from this. I mean, as not much different than what Gene was saying. There's just, how can you be ready for something? So, oh, sorry. But it's how can you be ready for something like this? You just can't.
Right.
So you just try and do your best to be ready for incidents. And the biggest one I would say, though, is actually learn to think outside the box. I mean, I've always been an outside the box thinker, and I try to stay on that. And I think a lot of people are taking that away too right now. Is that they're going, I need to learn how to think outside of the box.
Thank you, Charlotte. How about you?
Can you ask me the question again after I'm done dog paddling through this? Because I don't really know yet what I'm going to learn.
Yes.
I'm just...
Well, let's take it to date. What have you learned to date?
Staying calm is not something that a lot of human beings have perfected the art of, I guess.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Maybe we'll do a recap meeting in 6 months and see where we're at. With that, we're going to wrap it up, you guys. I want to thank the panel for attending. We have a lot of questions, so we're going to work on answering them on Facebook. Richard, we're going to post this on all the social media, right? The recording. Okay. If anybody has any questions to Charlotte, Gene, or Kurt, on the PowerPoint, there is an email, ctglc@SCA Coffee, that will get forwarded to us. We're all on LinkedIn. Feel free and reach out to us and ask us your questions. I'm currently managing the Facebook page, so if you do have questions or you do want more information, we're happy to help you. We're here to support you. If there's other ways we can support you, please let us know. I am going to turn this over to Richard, and we're done. Thank you for coming.
Yes,
Thanks, Hylan, for having this.
Yep, thank you.
Hylan, could you put on the last slide, because I think there's
the last slide with the emails is actually on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
You'll find us with the Coffee Technicians online. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you very much for joining us, Gene, Charla, and Kurt. And thank you very much for hosting Hylan. It's been a really interesting conversation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Wait, one last thing, Richard, is they can reach out to us via the blog also.
Anyway,
thank you, guys.
Possible.
Stay safe and have a great weekend.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.